fitness, I think, primarily. And I know she has been advising me about how their decision making has been going and whatnot. And so I don't want anybody to think that I'm an expert relative to gym policy and operations and whatnot. I'm not. But so anyway, that's helpful. I'll tell you a little bit about my background when you like.
Yeah. So, and you know, so the motive for the call is not to hear what your decision would be. What I think we're looking for is to really get in your head and understand what the process might look like. So, who you would lean on, you know, how you would balance between, you know, the economic crisis and the public health crisis that we have at hand. And just so everybody knows, I started recording the call. I got Mark's permission to do that before we started today. So just, you know, please everybody keep that in mind. I do plan on sharing it with the folks that weren't able to come, and even more broadly. So so thanks again, Mark. And why don't we start off with you just telling us a little bit about your background. I understand you were, you know, an entrepreneur yourself, and what your motives are for seeking the office.
Yeah, happy to do that. So just a couple of words about my background for those who don't know me. I'm 66 years old. I'm not a kid, so this could be a long story if I wanted it to be. I grew up in St. Louis. Was born on the hill. My parents moved to South County. I was essentially raised in Afton, and always had some involvement with both with the city and the county. Went to high school in the city. My first jobs were in the city. Lived in the county and whatnot. So, you know, after college, I went to law school. Then I went to graduate school for some financial training. Came back to St. Louis in the mid '80s, having moved around the country in the financial consulting business for about 5 or 6 years. Hung out a shingle, started practiced law for, I don't know, 16 years or something like that. Because of my training, I did a lot of corporate sort of stuff, a lot of family businesses. I put a lot of people into business, helped a lot of people grow their business, and small businesses, essentially family operations. And then as time went by, a lot of them succeeded. I ended up starting to help them sell their businesses. And I had been telling people what to do about business for a long time. And I had a client who came to me and said something like, okay, Mr. Big, you think you're so smart. Why don't you take over management of our business? And we'd like to sell it. He had a number in mind. He was dreaming at the time. And he said, can you get us this number? And I said, well, if you give me 3 or 4 years and you get out of the way, I think I might be able to help grow the business to that level. So I left law practice at about 45, 46 years old to take over the management of a marketing business. And I'm doing it a bit of it's a little bit of an exaggeration to call it really much of a marketing business. We had about 50 people and whatnot. And lo and behold, even though I don't fancy myself much of a marketing guy, we had some success. We digitized an analog business. I started there in 2000. By 2005, the family had exited for a number that was like 2.5 times what their hopes were. And private equity entered my life. I expected to go back to law practice. They asked me if I would stay on, remain CEO of the business. So I did that. And the business kept growing through a few more sets of private equity partners. By the time I left the business in 2016, it was actually the second largest independently owned digital marketing company in America. And we had offices all around the country, 800 or so employees. And as a practical matter, I think I listened to people for once in my life. And so I had some success with that business. Always considered myself a small business guy. Truth is, when I got out of graduate school, I had some opportunities to go to work for big companies, like a lot of MBAs do at the time, and I went to work for a small startup in the financial consulting business. And so, really, all of my training in real world training has all been in small business, which I love. I started my own law firm eventually, which continues to this day. I owned. I had a kid who was a big hockey player. I ended up owning a hockey store at one point, and so I've done a fair number of different sorts of things in small business. I relate to small business people. I just as illustrative of that, I used to tell people, look, you're never really an adult if you haven't made a payroll on your own. You don't really understand the implications of business if you haven't had to wager your vacation money in order to invest in the business. So I feel the challenges of being a small business person. I just it as being both the best thing in the world and the worst thing in the world, and have deep respect for people who are doing their own thing relative to trying to grow a business. So I, at any rate, enough about my small business cred, I guess. The fact is that when I was growing my marketing business, over the course of the years, we relocated the business to the city, bought an old warehouse, converted it into a kind of a vibey little, not that little, headquarters for our company, and we relocated in the city. And by virtue of that, Francis Slay, who I had known for many years, started inviting me to join various boards and commissions. I got involved in a lot of civic stuff. Ended up chairing the downtown partnership for a number of years, back like in 9, 10, and 11, actually, when downtown was kind of rolling. And uh, I came up against a number of realities relative to our region and its dysfunction across its governmental fragmentation and its lack of vision so far as its leadership is concerned. And when I did finally leave my business in 2016, rather than start a fourth ownership group and form a new board and all that kind of stuff, I had the opportunity to go spend a year in Cambridge. Harvard has a fellowship program for people who are going to try to figure out what their second career, in my case, it would have been more like my fourth, but second career would look like if they're interested in some type of a social project or a public service. So Patty, my wife, and I spent most of 2016 in Cambridge. I studied almost exclusively at the Kennedy School of Government. I thought I was going to come back to St. Louis and start some type of a not-for-profit to help our governmental entities figure their dysfunction out in a better way. While I was there, folks started asking me if I would consider actually running for office, which, as God is my witness, I hadn't thought about seriously. So in 2017, I made that commitment. I ran, as you may know, against Steve Stenger in 2018. Lost by a whisker then with his departure, and the need, according to the charter, to have an election to fill the balance of his term. Folks asked me again, since I had been so close, if I would do this again, and I agreed. I frankly don't really like running for office, but I would like to serve the community very badly. I think we have had very substandard regional leadership. Our progress as a region is woefully inadequate. This has been the situation for much of my lifetime, decades. In fact, we have languished. I talk frequently about the fact that the St. Louis that I grew up in when I was a kid had a very different feel and relevance to it than what we have today. The cities that I considered St. Louis peer cities when I was a kid, though I wouldn't have used those terms, were places like Boston and San Francisco and whatnot. St. Louis was the 10th largest city in America back then. And today we have lost our way so badly that our peer cities are maybe Louisville, if we give ourselves the benefit of the doubt, and Oklahoma City and the like. And frankly, I'm sick of it. I've got 3 grown adult children here who have children of their own, all live in St. Louis County. We actually have 10 grandkids, the oldest of which is only 6. And I want St. Louis to achieve its potential, which I consider to be fairly significant, and it hasn't. So This is purely for me an act of an attempt to provide service to others. I don't need a job. I don't want to be a politician, frankly. I don't want to run for any other office. All I want to do is help St. Louis get its act together. And to raise your hand and try to volunteer for such a position brings along with it all of the attacks and challenges from career politicians, people who don't think people like me really have a right. They act as though this is some type of an act of insolence or impertinence that I would assume to try to provide leadership for my community. On the other hand, I would argue that I'm the only person who's had real executive level experience growing a business which grew in all sorts of different kinds of economic conditions, good and bad. We never had a year where we didn't grow, even through the Great Recession in '8 and '9. And I think I have a different level of executive competence and orientation than guys who have been politicians. So it's sort of a clash of the. I don't mean to suggest I'm a Titan. Maybe a clash of the Titans and an ant relative to how to lead the community forward. And so that's how I got myself in this mess by believing that a better type of leadership is possible. I've traveled across the country, of course, for my business career, and I've seen communities sort of ignite themselves with a different level of community and a different level of leadership. And I think we have that same potential if we just sort of come together. I think that a different leader can help us come together. I've tried to build a big tent of folks who are not purely partisans on every type of issue, because I view our fundamental challenge as economic growth. We have these horrible social challenges. You all know them as well as I do: poverty and health disparities and housing issues and crime and income gaps, and I could go on and on. But if we don't create the sort of economic growth that allows us to expand our economic footprint, we lack the resources to even deal with them affirmatively. And so I think the starting point is for the region to focus on achieving some higher level of economic growth, which requires the community and the government to embrace businesses in a different sort of way, which is, I guess, sort of brings me to your conundrum, because it feels to me that there is a sort of there is an alienation between many governmental entities and people who are trying to build something of substance, and that is counterproductive for the business owner, but it's counterproductive for our community. Only if we come to see ourselves as a place that is expanding opportunity and for success, expanding our opportunity to receive investment, will we change our trajectory and become a place of growth to produce the resources that we need to deal with our fundamental social challenges. So sorry for the monologue. I didn't mean to filibuster there, but wanted to sort of give you a bit of an idea for how I came here, how I came to be here this morning.
No, that's very helpful. Understanding your background, I think, is key. So, and your motivations. One of the challenges that I think, I can't speak for everybody, but I mean, we've had lots of detailed discussions as a group, and there's, a pretty consistent theme is that, the current leadership has used a very narrow lens to evaluate the problems afoot and made policy decisions without really considering the unintended consequences of them. It's not it's not just government that's at fault here. I think there's plenty of blame to lay at the feet of the press with their treatment and scaring people to death. And I mean, it is a scary situation, and it has to be dealt with seriously. And any rational person, including everyone on this call, understands that this is not a hoax. It is a serious public health crisis. But what we're looking for is a big picture approach to solving the problem. So, Sam Page is an anesthesiologist. He's got lots of his professional network are largely doctors. And, when you look at the decision making, that lens is clearly the one that was used. And not even if you just take that myopic perspective and just, hey, we're just going to look through the medical lens here, there's all sorts of unintended consequences, I think, that were failed to be considered. Like, people are not going to hospitals to get mammograms and colonoscopies. Some people aren't even going to hospitals to get chemotherapy and cancer treatment. So, whatever decisions are made, you got to look at the consequences on both sides of the table. And we don't feel like, as a group, we don't feel like that was considered. Gyms, for example, there's a lot of benefit to exercise, especially in a pandemic, and not only the physical health but the mental health aspects of staying fit. And we appealed on that basis, and we're largely ignored. So what would be your approach to striking a balance between the public health crisis and the economic crisis that really we're dealing with here?
So my view of this is that in large measure, the county executive, as you've suggested, has defaulted to his medical training. And that's not an entirely wrong-headed notion, I don't think. But his decision-making and his approach suggests to me a person who has a very juvenile understanding of what leadership looks like. So after I had been a CEO a number of years, I remember a conversation my wife and I were having, and somehow or other we started talking about how leading a growing business organization varied from what I had expected. And I told her, I remember this very clearly, the thing that surprised me the most was how rarely I got to do what I wanted. The fact is that many people, when they think about a CEO or a leader of some organization, they believe that person gets to make all the decisions, gets to do what they want to do all the time. And as a practical matter, my view of leadership is that it's sort of quite the contrary. When I was running my business, I had a variety of different stakeholders that influenced all decisions, employees and customers and clients and investors and boards of directors and whatnot. And many people, when they become a leader, they default to, I'm going to do what I think is right. Well, you don't want to, I don't want to suggest that you're not true to yourself, but you have to balance other interests. And that requires collaboration. You always hear this stuff about being a good listener is important to being a good leader. And in some respects, I think it sounds sophomoric, but at its core, it is true, because you have to evaluate what your decision is going to mean, look like, influence others, and it's just not about yourself. So, I mean, moving away from you guys as gym owners, I mean, this is the error that has been made on the youth sports issue. I don't know whether the decision is right or wrong, but I know it's been made poorly, because there should have been an effort by the county executive before he announced that decision to engage with athletic directors and facility owners and pediatricians and coaches and parents and public health experts there should have been a consortium of people consulted, and they should have sat down and they should have had a meeting, and they should have spent some time together. And if for no other reason than to allow those people to participate in the decision-making process. And I don't mean in terms of it being a camouflage. I mean really participate. The reason he's in trouble with the youth sports people, I don't think it's really just the decision. I think it's the fact that he gives the impression of trying to be Moses, going to the mountaintop, getting the commandments, bringing them down, and dictating the rule. That never works, right? That just doesn't work. And it sounds to me like even with your efforts to try to, there was sort of a dismissive uh, response, and that reflects on, to me, a very juvenile understanding of what leadership looks like. Uh, Again, that reflects somebody who thinks that because they're the leader, they get to do what they want to do. No, you have to make the decision, but you have to make the decision based on more than your prejudice, your bias, your thinking. You have to make it based on how it affects others. And what I have seen so far as the county executive and the health department's response to this is a failure primarily of collaboration and effective communication. He goes before the media every chance he gets, but sort of uninspiring way. A better approach would be to communicate more effectively, maybe communicate less, but communicate more effectively after real collaboration with folks. And I do you remember? I don't know if this applied to you guys, but when he announced that businesses were closing, at one point he said the businesses are going to stay closed indefinitely.
Yes, we remember.
Well, that's totally unworkable
Right.
for a business owner. It's disrespectful, in fact, because you guys have employees you have to communicate with who are wondering what their future looks like. You have customers and members, as the case may be. It's totally disrespectful, in my opinion, to everybody else's circumstances. And but look, I mean, he doesn't know better. I don't think. Maybe he's learning. All right, hell of a thing. And they talk about the fact that I have to learn on the job. Well, different lessons, perhaps, but that's not the way leadership should look. So I think they failed miserably in collaborating and communicating, and they've tried to go it alone, and that doesn't work in the best of times. It certainly doesn't work when there are challenges to so many.
Yeah. Yeah, we would agree. To say that the decision-making process or the decision makers wore blinders doesn't give it adequate weight. I mean, it was really done, like you said, that not providing some sort of timeline, even if the timeline has to ultimately be adjusted, and
Right.
you express that caveat when you communicate the timeline, but it allows no planning, on the business's part, and people are treading water indefinitely. And like you said, there's a lot of stakeholders at the table. There's members, there's employees, there's the owners, and it not only caused a lot of anxiety for us, but those other stakeholders in the situation were also unnecessarily harmed by this. So that's helpful. One of the big challenges too, in addition to that very narrow focus that was leveraged to navigate this crisis, was this is more Ted's view here. Somebody else actually sent this comment or question in, but I agree with it wholeheartedly. Is that Sam Page relied almost exclusively on the health department to, and again, I don't know if this was a CYA effort of like, hey, if this thing goes sideways, the health department is the one who guided us here. But even during that meeting, it was, hey, I'm here for 10 minutes to the meeting that we had in person that he dialed into. Hey, I'm here for 10 minutes to show my face so I can check the box with the media. but ultimately these are your decision makers here. And nothing against the health department, they've got a mission, and that mission is to solely is to manage the public health aspect of this. There were no economists at the table. The Chamber of Commerce wasn't there. Nobody from the business community. And there were comments that a few of us were at the table that kind of blew my mind. One of which was there was a doctor from the health department there when we talked about how the 25% capacity rule, isn't sustainable. The comment from their side of the table was, well, this may be our new normal. And the lack of understanding inherent in that comment. Do you know what 25% capacity for perpetuity means? It means that every economic model that was built to establish a business is now out the window, right? And the economy falls apart at that level. So, Sam Page's office relied very heavily on the health department, almost exclusively. Again, I don't know the motivations there, if it was CYA or what, but who would be who would you lean on in government or outside of government to help guide you if you were in that position?
Well, I don't know that I would bring the chamber in. Perhaps I would certainly I would certainly broaden the participation in those kinds of sessions, as I said, relative to the youth sports situation. I mean, and look, it's not in my interest to defend these guys at all. But in April, uh, the level of uh, fear in our country, much less our region, was high. And uh, the New York City experience, I think, was sort of being etched in our consciousness, and there was a high level of fear that every place was going to be New York City. And I mean, this fear was reflected in decisions that were made in St. Louis County, the construction of a morgue, for example, and rather than the sort of variable options of vehicular morgues or ice rinks or what have you and the like. So there was this fear of the implications of this pandemic, and nobody knew how this was going to evolve in our community. Uh, but the failure to uh, communicate sincerely and to include people with other concerns, I think, it was a fatal flaw. I mean, uh, I don't understand. First of all, when you, Ted, were you initially describing the participants in your group between sort of I don't the big box gyms. I don't know if that's a term of derision or not. I don't mean it that way. Or versus the smaller boutique sorts of gyms. It certainly seems to me that one could have immediately identified different approaches that would have applied and kept people safe in those various types of establishments. I mean, I don't know. So I even back in April, I was surprised that they said institutions are closed. I mean, now the economic model might have been destroyed, would have been destroyed, but clearly one person at a time could have gone into a gym, it seems to me, and used the equipment in the gym and wiped it down and waited 45 minutes and have a gym owner clean also, and then another person come in. So once you establish the fact that there are ways to be open, then it just becomes a question of what that procedure is. And working, you guys, it seems to me, should have been working with the health department. They should have been working with you in order to always ascertain what those reasonable levels of uh, operation were, as opposed to things just being shut down. I'm sure you guys, a lot of you have done this, but I mean, Patty, my wife, we've continued to pay her dues to her gym, and daily she gets the video workout, does it the in her own basement. We've got a place where she can get that done, and uh, we're paying the same dough, and so I think there those kinds of things, there should have been collaboration with respect to who I would engage. I mean, I don't know. I hope that I've got people around me who understand the economic implications of decisions, in addition to health risks and the like. I don't think that would be a stretch to assume that would be the case in my administration, because I wouldn't have felt comfortable telling you're shut down indefinitely. I just not something that I would have probably been comfortable with. The other, that amazes me about this is only in the government is there such zero use of metrics. I mean, why there was never a statement like, look, our rate of disease is this, okay? If our rate of disease plateaus for a period of 2 weeks, then we're going to go to this. If it's going to continues to accelerate, we're going to have to look at this. There is no objectivity with respect to this stuff, in my view. It is sort of like behind the curtain, the Wizard of Oz. And only in government. I mean, we who run businesses could never operate without analysis based on metrics and the like. But these folks who run governmental entities, they seem devoid of skills to focus on accountability and metrics, which to those of us who haven't lived like that just seems negligent, neglectful. So I don't.
Yeah, so just to put it in context too, so the meeting that we had in person, I just went back and looked at my calendar, that was May 20th. So at that point, for 2.5 weeks, the rest of the state had already been open. So it wasn't in April. We were much further down the path. So there's still not certainty, but we had.
The other thing that drives me nuts is, and this goes back to how I came to be involved in public affairs. The inconsistency of regulations across our region, St. Charles, the city, St. Louis County, is just preposterous. I mean, it is preposterous. A family told me about a baseball team that one of their kids was playing on that was supposed to be in a tournament in St. Louis County. St. Louis County wouldn't let them play baseball. So they moved the tournament into St. Mary's High School in the city. I mean, this is preposterous. Like, the virus is different. And I might be too harsh, but I blame the county executive for this stuff, because the St. Louis County is the economic engine for the region and the state. The leader of St. Louis County has to be a bigger person and bring others together in order to achieve some consistency. To this day, those kids are playing baseball, in Jefferson County and in St. Charles County, in Franklin County. And as you know from your investments and business, the gyms have been operating differently in these different regions. This is maddening, in my opinion. And some of it is a function of this legacy that we have of fragmentation. But practically speaking, the county executive needs to be enough of a leader to convene these other leaders and say, look, guys, we're going to have to come together on this. We're willing to give on this. You guys are going to have to give on this. But we cannot be running a metropolitan area here that is as fragmented on these rules as I think we are.
Yeah, it's actually probably worse than in this particular scenario. So in St. Louis City, treadmills were banned. Not ellipticals, not rowers, not stair steppers. Just in St. Louis City, it makes zero sense. But in St. Louis County, they did not have that restriction. What that does is it illustrates the complete and utter lack of understanding of what they're doing. They have no idea what they're doing. And how you get an idea of what to do is you talk to people. And had there been a two-way dialogue with anybody in our industry, the first thing we would have said is, hey, that makes no sense, and here's why. And they would have immediately made an adjustment, because it makes no sense that I can use a rower or an elliptical or a Stairmaster, but my treadmills are closed.
It also suggests they've never been to a gym.
Right.
I mean, I mean, have they must have never worked out once in their life, because that is so blatantly unreasonable that that decision had to be made by someone who has had no experience inside a gym.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And that's fine if you've never been inside a gym, but consult some people who have some understanding.
Of course.
And that didn't happen. We only have a minute or so left here to tell us, and we really appreciate you coming and spending some time with us. How do we, if the message that you delivered here was to our liking and we want to support you, what's the best way to do that?
Well, we have a website that's Mark Mantovani for St. Louis that you can go to, and it'll walk you through the process of volunteering or supporting us financially or telling you more about me. At least we need help. We're running against career politicians who have machines that they've sort of built up over the decades and whatnot. I think we're very competitive. I think the outcome hangs in the balance. It's influenced by people turning out. Nobody really knows who's going to turn out in these unusual times. And so we need financial support. We need votes to the extent that you have influence with others. And some of you probably do. And you can, if you feel like I have some sense and you want to encourage others, that's greatly appreciated because you can get our word out for us in ways that I can't. So those are some of the basic ways. I'd appreciate it. Anything that y'all can do, and the only thing I know for sure is that I would not be neglectful of businesses and the implications of decisions like this on business owners, because I've lived it and I feel it and I revere what you all are all about. So I guess I would leave you with that message.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate that, and we understand. Nobody's expecting any blanket statements that you would do this or that, but just knowing that there's a channel of communication that we could leverage and get a seat at the table is, I mean, for me, very, very, very helpful. Okay. Well, listen, thank you again for the time. If there's anything, links or that you want to send my way, I'll be happy to send to the group.
And if y'all have questions or something like that, my email, you can go through the website if you want, or my personal email is just mark@markmantovani.com. Pretty simple, mark@markmantovani.com. You can send me a note or a question. I'll do my best to get back to you. And I certainly wish you all the best. I hope that the worst is far behind us. I wanted to tell you two things in closing. One, I feel your pain also because of the fact that my campaign has been totally affected by COVID. And so I've had to adapt as you all have, and I think that I feel that. The other thing is, look, this is going to get better. I mean, I don't get in office even if things go my way until January. I predict that by January, much of this is going to be behind us. I think that the science and research community is going to come to our aid here sooner rather than later. And so you guys just got to hang in there. I know it's tough, but if you can hang in there for another 4 or 5 months, I think, and hopefully not that long, but I'm confident that in that period of time, your business will revert to prior levels. But so hang in there. Keep after it. Don't give up. give them hell, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, that's a great way to close. I agree with you, by the way. We're just trying to hunker down and make it till there's a vaccine or things die down.
Right.
So thanks again for your time,
Thanks,
and
Scott.
we'll be in touch.
Appreciate it very much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.